Hello everyone, we are into the last session of this week and we will be talking about the governance in the perspective of environmental protection and some of the reforms and challenges in the water governance in India in this session. To begin with, the dams are a very important water structures, and India has 100 of big dams have been built to promote development and for hydropower activities. However, many of such dams have been controversial, starting from the major post independence irrigation project dam which was made, the Bhakra dam, to the various famous issues related to the Sardar Sarovar dam at Narmada in MP and even the Tehri dam. So, the dams in the Assam. So, we have sort of our most of the dam projects, particularly the large dam projects, somehow undergo some sort of controversies. The legal regime on dams includes the latest legal regimes. There has been sort of development across this, but the available legal regimes at present includes the notification on environmental impact assessment of 2006. So, there has been earlier versions which has been discarded when this 2006 notification was accepted, and we have right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement act of 2013. So, further there has been basically attempts for the amendment of the act, this particular act, rehabilitation and resettlement act by the current government. However, it could not take shape as it is. The rehabilitation and resettlement is a major point of controversy in the water projects, large water projects. It is true for the dams, it is true for various other water projects as well. In case of dam, when you go for creating a large impoundment, you need to basically have you need to acquire, or the agency need to acquire a large area land. Now, the villages in and around has to be moved. So, there comes the issue of rehabilitation and resettlement, and that is one of the very important reasons for these creating lot of controversies across these dams. There has been a unique case, particularly in the case of Sardar Sarovar dam, which is in fact the only case where a Narmada water dispute tribunal was set up in 1979 under the Interstate Water Dispute Act, and this was to basically look for the rehabilitation and resettlement for the Sardar Sarovar dam that way. This decided and sort of that displaced people should be given land for land compensation. So, if government is acquiring the land, it should give the land as in a compensation to these people. However, the government was willing to give cash for land. So, they were willing to procure land and giving them the cash, but the tribunal in fact gave its decision that those who are getting displaced should be given land as a compensation for the land which is being acquired and not the cash. If we see the environmental issues with water resources projects, particularly with the large water resources projects, so the environmental impact of these water resources project is one of the most contentious environmental issues of our generation, our times. The water resources project fetch several beneficial impacts on the socio-economic status of the country. We cannot avoid water resources projects. Okay. We for example, we have been discussing the river interlinking project. Okay. So, it has a lot of benefits. we often see the floods in one area, the drought in other area. So, if we are not able to manage it properly, the condition will prevail like this. There has to be something done in order to control the flood, in order to control the drought. Even if, let us say, forget about river interlinking, even if you want to control a flood system, you will have to give at least the safe passage or safe storage of the water. Okay. Further, we have projects related to hydropower, which is a renewable energy. There has been issues of reducing carbon footprints. Now, with thermal power plants which have a lot of carbon footprints, it becomes very difficult. So, you have to look for the alternate sources of energy with low carbon footprint, and hydropower gives an attractive option where the power can be generated without fossil fuels, and thus leading to the less carbon footprint. So, these calls for the some of the dams and this kind of things. Further, we have irrigation projects. So, we have to make canals in order to supply water. We have waterways projects. So, this kind of then water supply, sanitation projects, the storm water management projects. So, these water projects in fact are necessary, unavoidable. These are necessary for the management of water quality and quantity issues and ensure a sustainable way. Therefore, some of these projects or most of these projects are in fact unavoidable. Only thing is, we have to look a way in which it can be basically accomplished in a most sustainable fashion. However, at the same time, water resources projects root certain high level risks along with the several adverse effects for the physical as well as social environment. Now, if you are creating a dam, acquiring lot of land, people being displaced, they are leaving their livelihood, whatsoever their setup, their ancestors' place, and they are forced to move to a new place even if they are given compensation for that. But then that has a lot of adverse social impacts. Similarly, there is a risk involved if dams and these kind of structures are being created. So, although the engineering aspects are there, and if proper design and proper engineering is done in place, so the risk can be reduced or can be minimized. However, still there is a possibility of some risk, or at least as it is perceived from the social circles, NGOs, civil societies, that there is a large risk with the water resources related project. Now, at one point they are unavoidable, and at second point they have associated risk with this. So, we see that the water resources project have both positive and negative impacts. There are positive or beneficial impacts and there are negative or adverse impact. Further, these could be direct impact which caused by the direct action. Okay. So, most of the beneficial impacts are by the direct action. It could be indirect impact due to induced changes. So, there are some beneficial and some non-beneficial, or some negative adverse impacts could be due to the indirect action as well. The rehabilitation and all that could basically lead to the indirect even indirect effects as well, some of the direct effects while some of the indirect effects. Now, these effects may be ecological, aesthetic, historic, cultural, economical, social, or health impacts. Okay. It could be direct, indirect, or both type of effects. So, there is like large degree of variation of the kind of impact, kind of effect it can create on society, it can create on nature, it can create on the environment, aesthetics, financial environment. So, because of this complexities, one set of people welcome the new water resources project who are pro development and that way, while another set of people aggressively oppose or denounce these projects, and this results typically in the social controversies. So, there has been lot of public movements against variety of large water resources projects, particularly the dam projects. We have seen the controversies related to the Sardar Sarovar Dam, Narmada Bachao Andolan, then there was Tihri Dam, Chipko movement, there is Assam against dam. So, those kind of this thing, even in the case of river interlinking project, there is a large section who is actually opposing it, the river interlinking project, based on all this, that what would be the requirement of land, from where it is going to come, what will happen to the rehabilitation issues, and various, it can disturb the ecology or the environmental conditions, the nature, a lot of land requirement would be there. So, all those things are coming in, and that is how the social controversies are created, particularly with the large water resources projects. From law perspective, the environmental protection for the projects, not only water resources projects, but all projects including water resources, as per the constitutions, are actually under different this thing. So, there is state's responsibility as article 48A. So, states shall endeavor the protect, improve environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. So, the environmental protection comes under state's purview, that is as per the constitution's article 48A. It is the fundamental, earlier we talk about the right to water and sanitation or right to life, under which article 21, when we have fundamental rights for every citizen. So, there is a right to life. So, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. So, under article 21 we have a right to basically have a safe and clean environment for leading our lives. However, there is a fundamental duty of every citizen also, which are mentioned in article 51A G, and it shall be duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So, this is a fundamental duty also. We often talk about the rights, but we many times ignores or the basic or the fundamental duties. So, in fact, like when we have schemes like Swachh Bharat Mission or those kind of thing. So, it is essentially because we have not been doing our fundamental duty properly of keeping the environment clean. So, these issues of the various pollutions and these things have surfaced up. Had we been more responsible towards the environment, towards the nature, had we been more responsible towards the constitutional fundamental duty, the situations would have been much more pleasant for living. For hydro projects, if we look at the legal and regulatory frameworks, so we have various regulatory agencies which look at and work at different levels. We have Ministry of Environment and Forest. Now it has Ministry of Environment and Forest, further river and Ganga regeneration, this thing. We have Central Pollution Control Board, the various state pollution control boards for different states, and we have state level environmental impact assessment authority. So, all these look at different levels. The principal role of agencies, if we see, so the ministry formulates the environmental policies and accords environmental clearance for the projects. The central or state pollution control boards accords no objection certificate or NOC and consent for establishment and operation of the project. So, if any project is being planned, it needs to get the environmental clearance from the ministry, okay, and it can get that clearance only after state level environmental impact assessment, only after the appropriate environmental impact assessment, whether it is being done at state level or central level, that secondary thing. but there has to be a EIA report particularly, and based on that the ministry in fact accords the environmental clearance, and when it is done, the for putting up an industry or those kind of thing, we need NOC from the central or state pollution control boards to see that the event or the activity which is being planned, or the industry which is being which is going to be installed, the factory which is going to be coming in a place, will not create any sort of pollution. So, there has to be a NOC to be obtained from the pollution control boards, and a consent for establishment and operation for the projects. If we talk about some recent reforms in water governance in India, so we have so many water programs and schemes going through. We have river interlinking, what we discussed. We have watershed development projects from the ministry on a watershed level. So, various for watershed for various rivers are being considered under that way. We have ongoing national hydrology project, which look for the research and development activities as well as development of the hydrological basins in India for various rivers, and it is a national project across all the states. We have National Mission for Clean Ganga NMCG, under which this Namami Gange and these kind of programs are going on. We have the active observation and involvement from the National Green Tribunal NGT and judiciary systems. So, that is like we have very proactive judiciary system these days, and we keep on hearing the big impact decisions from the judiciary. Few other important things, CPCB is enforcing online monitoring system and zero liquid discharge ZLD. So, that is another important aspect. The Central Pollution Control Board, in fact, towards the water quality management, this is going to be one of the landmark step, because we know that many industry release the untreated or partially treated sewage directly into the untreated or partially treated effluent directly into the water, directly into the primarily rivers, and that is the one of the major reasons for the pollution in the rivers. So, if those kind of practices are to be stopped, it has to be we have issues of corruption and these things. So, on a human level or administration level or authoritative level, it becomes very difficult to control and regulate these things. However, the automation or this kind of tools, if it is adopted, it will reduce the chances of misleading, and it will ensure the transparency in the system. So, in line to that, CPCB is actually enforcing online monitoring system to all industries, so that their ETP channel or the final ETP channel should have sensor based detection of various water quality parameters, and the data would directly transfer to the CPCB server as well. So, CPCBs will get these data recorded directly from the sensors. So, no possibility of fudging with the data, that recording is something else and reporting is something else, or detecting is something else, and this before the data gets to the CPCB, it is the change. So, whatsoever is being recorded is actually being transferred over to the CPCB central server, where it can be observed. The pollution control board, either central or state pollution control board, has an observation of what is being done with what industries. Further, it is bringing a policy of zero liquid discharge, which is typically called ZLD. That means all the industries or all such units should use their effluent in totality and should not discharge anything to the river or surface water bodies. So, it has to be used in the premises of this thing. So, that is the concept of zero liquid discharge, means no water is going to be discharged or no polluted water is going to be discharged. So, if industry is cleaning its water anyway, so they will have preferably a reuse option for whatever purpose within the industry, why they will discharge the clean water and then again abstract that water and pay for it. So, that brings a concept of zero liquid discharge, which is another important reform in the current age. There is a provision of rainwater harvesting in building approval. So, for the large building approval, some of the state or some of the places it is coming that if your area is larger than this, you have to have a rainwater harvesting system. So, again that is a pretty good step in order to ensure that these kind of at least large structures could take a step further towards the self sustainability or their dependency more onto the rainwater and harvested rainwater, and reducing the requirement of the piped water supply in that sense, that fashion. There has been steps towards developing river fronts. Okay. So, variety of various steps are being taken for developing some particular riverfront areas. We have Sabarmati riverfront developed in Ahmedabad, and similar steps are being planned for a few other places as well across the different rivers. Well, apart from this, there are few other such schemes. We did talk about the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, which is for the irrigation water. We did talk about the earlier the Clean Ganga mission, okay, Namami Gange, or similarly for other rivers, the Yamuna reform policies are being made and are being drawn. There has been navigation project, waterways navigation projects are also being thought about. So, all these recent initiatives or reforms are being planned. In the water sector, the Mihir Shah committee, which was which basically gave its report in couple of years back, not even couple of years completely, it gave its report in 2016. So, they said that there is an urgent overhaul of the current water management system is required. So, they proposed a major reform in the form of that the Central Water Commission and Central Groundwater Board we have should be abolished or should be merged, and we should have a National Water Commission kind of agency. Now, the point is, because if you see the purview of Central Water Commission, so Central Water Commission generally looks for the water issues related to the irrigation, surface water management issue related to the water supply, irrigation and those kind of some of the things, river basin management kind of activities, while Groundwater Board of India essentially looks at the groundwater. So, what is the pumping of groundwater, this thing. However, if you keep these in isolation, we have a Central Water Commission and we have a Central Groundwater Board. We know that we have earlier studied that there is a complete water cycle, water is linked from here to there. So, in such scenarios, there is a interaction takes place between surface water and groundwater, and if we make independent policies of groundwater without thinking about the surface water, or independent policies for river basin without thinking of the groundwater status, there is issues are supposed to arise. So, the Mihir Shah committee, Mihir Shah was actually a former president of the planning commission, chairperson of the planning commission. So, the committee, Mihir Shah committee recommended that we should take an integrated approach, we should restructure the Central Water Commission and Central Groundwater Board, and rather have one single apex agency on a national scale, and we can probably call that as National Water Commission. So, we should rather have a National Water Commission as a nation or India's apex facilitation organization dealing with water policy, data and governance. Also, it should basically have all the purview, all the jurisdiction of the CWC and CGWB, along with various gaps which has left unaddressed by these two agencies. Okay. Because like if you see the industrial water supply, that does not come in the purview of CWC, or it does not come in the purview of CGWB. So, those kind of things which have basically left as it is, so they should also bring into the umbrella of National Water Commission, and rather that should have a look at it. It further warned against the perils of dependence on large dam projects. So, that was the one of the recommendations of the Mihir Shah committee report. Further, it asked for the Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh model of participatory last mile connectivity should be developed across the country. So, that model should basically be expanded. The model which is being adopted in Gujarat and MP should be expanded on a national level. It also said that states should concentrate on technically and financially complex structures, okay, such as main systems up to secondary level. So, the major primary and secondary systems should under the purview of states, while tertiary level canals and below minor structures and field channels, these kind of stuff, the smaller channels should handed over to the water user associations of farmer. So, they should be the one which should be given the responsibility of managing this. It further said that the focus should shift from construction to the decentralized management and maintenance in order to ensure the promise which has been made under the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana in the form of Har Khet Ko Pani. So, those kind of recommendations were made from the Mihir Shah committee report, which was came in 2016. Now, if we look at the water governance issues and prospects in India, we have been discussing about the governance in previous week as well, and in this week specifically about the India. Now, we if you just recall and have a holistic summary of the discussion so far. So, we have a lot of rules and regulations, lot of policy frameworks. It becomes at times difficult to compile each and everything, primarily because if you try to see, so we have had the central laws and policies which we discussed have very limited role. They are limited to the policy making only, and since water is in the purview of the state, so each state has their own again have their own policy frameworks, their own regulations, their own laws onto the water governance systems. So, there is a broad agreement, everybody realizes that India's water sector is facing serious challenge in almost every sector, almost every theme. There is a problem with the irrigation water supply, there is a problem of drinking water supply and coverage and quality as well, there is a problem of industrial supplies, there is a problem of scarcity, river basin management, flood, drought, hydropower projects. So, in almost every sector, in almost every theme, there are serious challenges the nation is facing in the water sector. And our water establishment, whether it is a central scale establishment or state scale establishment, they also more or less by and large accept this fact that there are serious issues and challenges. The problem is that the most analysis talk about specific theme and how to deal with them. So, for example, if I am looking at a irrigation sector, so there will be basically all the research and people will sit and discuss that okay, this is needed to be done here, this is how the irrigation water should be brought in, this is how it should be optimized, this is how it should be done, we should abstract from surface water, groundwater. So, all those things will basically triggered about the irrigation sector and look at how to solve, how to deal with the problems in the irrigation sector. However, it becomes difficult because the water as a resource is interlinked. So, whatsoever policy as and this thing is being adopted in irrigation sector may have a net impact on to the other developmental aspects, industrial supply, domestic supply. So, these kind of issues can actually come while looking, if we look the problem in a very focused or very restricted manner. There is very less significant body of analysis about the state of water governance in India and our unique challenges and opportunities. So, India's challenges, if you see, our context is very unique. Okay. The program and the policy which has worked in other nations may not work well in India. Forget about other nations. Many times we see that the water policy which is suitable for one of the states in India may not be very well suitable for the other state in India. Many times these issues can also occur because we have various differences in the geographies, differences in the cultural practices, differences in the availability of resources. So, all those things are there. The issues of multiple and exclusive, this like in terms of governance if we see, so the major issue comes in terms of the multiple and exclusive and non-interacting agencies. So, we have various agencies which have control over the or which have the water policy legislation framing under their own purview. Even in a state level you see, we have a irrigation department which looks for the irrigation related matter. We have a drinking water supply section, we have municipalities, we have public health departments. So, these there are different units, different set of these things, and they have their own priorities. As we were discussing, they make the policies for their own objectives. So, when you do this in a non-interacting fashion, in a exclusive manner, that okay, I am just looking at this particular challenge, this particular prospect, you are not interacting with other, you are not coordinating with other agencies in a transparent and participatory way, it becomes difficult to come with an integrated policy. And as we discussed earlier, that integrated water management is need of the hour for holistic management of the water resources. So, the different tier of industries is fine, we should have decentralized responsibilities and decentralized control, but there has to have the proper coordination between. So, we actually need one such system where all these different stakeholders, different agencies can come and interact at a forum, and the policies which are being made, let us say for drinking water purpose, what impact it will have in a sanitation sector, what impact it will have in an agricultural sector, what impact it will have in a industrial supply sector, or what kind of impact it will have on an environmental sector should be assessed. Similarly, for agriculture, what impact it is going to have on all other sectors. So, when we come with the integrated policies, that is how our management things can be improved, and there is a lot of scope as we discussed. Just like Mirsa committee, if you that also if you see, so they say that there is a large degree of reforms, like complete overhauling of the water management is needed in this sector. Lastly, we should look in our own context. Okay, India's context is very unique, as we were just discussing. It will not match with what is being done in the western world or what is being done in another country. So, we will have to figure out a solution to the issues related to water, issues related not related to the, see, we can adopt a technology from the West, but the management practices has to be tailor made for our own situations. So, whatever conditions, whatever challenges we have, we should have a solution fit for this situation, fit for these contexts, and that can be done by exploring local conditions and getting knowledge from all the different places. Getting the idea of good practices from all different places is fine, but we should come up with a framework of managing the or framework of adopting the policies, principles and taking the management decisions in a specific localized fashion. So, with this we conclude the discussions in this week. This week we basically talked about the water governance in India. Earlier we discussed the basics of water governance. So, we are ending this week's session here, and in next week we will talk about some of the issues related to the dispute management. Thank you.